A very good morning and afternoon to some of you, and thank you for joining our virtual roundtable talk on a very special topic, getting back to work, and how diversity helps paving the way out of this economic crisis. So since March this year, we business, trade, economies, politics, we all are making some new experiences and we are all going through different phases. What is helping us, what is not helping us, maybe our attitude, experience, mindset, or a diverse team. So we have with us today distinguished speakers from different areas who will be sharing with us their experience and learnings. And this is my honor to say thank you to our host of this talk, Mr. Julio Winkler, a long-term member of the European Parliament and the first Vice President of the SME Europe, a strong and active group of the European People's Party. And Mr. Winkler is a very committed member caring for the SMEs in Europe and building bridges between Europe and other continents. We also have with us Mr. Jeffrey Goh, CEO Star Alliance, who is also our keynote speaker. We have Ursula Schwarzenbart, Chief Diversity and Talent Officer at Daimler. We have Anand Padmanabhan, President of the Wipro Technologies, Eric Bergfitz, member of the European Parliament, and other members of the SME Europe and Connect are represented by Dr. Horst Heitz. So now I request our host, Mr. Winkler, for his welcome words.
Thank you very much, Srita, dear colleagues, panelists, dear participants. As you could just see, everything has changed. Not even the family photo is as it used to be, because we are, of course, at 1,000 kilometers away from each other. But important is that we still are members of the same family, and today are members of the same panel and of the same discussion. Let me just start with the two brief acknowledgements. First, to SME Europe, which we used to say in the EPP, in the European People's Party, that is representing more than 400,000 SMEs across Europe, through our members in the European Parliament and through the economic organizations or SME organizations of the member parties of the EPP. So it's an honor for me to be really hosting here in the name of SME Europe and SME Connect, of course, as a guest, and to represent all those small and medium enterprise, because our distinguished panelists are representing bigger SMEs, let's say so, not small and not middle size at all. Then let me acknowledge Srita, you for your preparations and all this work, Heinrich and Horst for this meeting today. Then let me just share with you a brief thought about where we stand today, because it's 2020, so it is still the first quarter of the 21st century. And if I remember correctly, several times in the last 2 decades, we considered that really the 21st century is beginning. It was the dot-com burst, then it was 9/11 in the United States, then it was for the European Union, the enlargements in 2004, in 2007, and we were so optimistic about enlargement, which will continue, and I'm sure that it will continue at the European Union level. It is the rise of China. Then 2009, the financial crisis came. And if you remember how often we said in 2010 that never business as usual, we will not go back to the former practices, and we will be like children reborn in a new financial and economic global atmosphere, which did not happen, if I recollect correctly. Then it came 2015 in the European Union with the migration crisis. Then we had the Brexit, and now we have the coronavirus. So when does really the 21st century start? What do we have to be prepared for? Which type of crisis, which type of challenge do we have to respond? And when I say we, then of course I think, to our society as a whole, economic players, politics, administration, and so on. So 2020 will be the year of the coronavirus. That's quite sure now. It's clear. I hope it will not be in a few times, years from now, it will not be the year of the beginning of the pandemic. I hope it will be just the year of the pandemic. And this is not very clear at all. So what do we see now? A global context already developed in the last 2 or 3 weeks. We have this global context to start the recovery. Everybody is planning exit from the lockdowns. Everybody is planning restarting economies, restarting travel, which is not easy at all. What about our summer holidays? Because tourism in Europe is the #1 global tourism destination. So, we are in a global context for starting the recovery. Of course, I think it's quite clear that the 3 main actors in this contest, at least as regarding us, are the United States, China, and the European Union. And I'm sure that we as a European Union do not want to be last in this global contest. We have to take care, first of all, about our youth, because we already had almost a lost generation in 2009, 2010. You remember that the first consequence of the financial crisis then and the subsequent economic crisis was a huge job loss in the youth sector. So there were in Spain, in Portugal, in my country, in Romania, thousands and I think millions at European level of young people who lost their jobs and who had or didn't even get their first job and had a very, very gloomy prospect. We have to avoid this now, and we have to, if not to win, but to be between the winners of this global contest to start the recovery. So we need to tap on our advantages. And this brings me to the topic of today's discussion, advantages. We need advantages, and we need new generation advantages. I don't know if such a notion exists, but let's invent it together here today. New generation advantages, advantages for in the 21st century, advantages in the volatile context that we live, and advantages in the middle of a pandemic, which we are not quite sure yet. It will have a escalation in the second part of this year. We will be able, or the global science will be able to find the cure, the vaccine, or not so easy. Diversity advantage. And yes, it is clearly an advantage. I would pay tribute to Srita about the remarks for today's discussion, because among her lines, she said that in Southern and Eastern Europe, maybe we are not so quite accustomed to discuss about diversity advantage. And yes, it is true. I can be a witness of this. Europe is diverse, and Western and Eastern and Northern Europe, we have different cultures. But of course, we have the same values and we have the same objectives. So we have to discuss about what is not so usual. We have to go beyond the working time, beyond the competitiveness discussion, beyond the economic or trade aspects, and to see this interlinkage of our world. Today, we are so interlinked. We are living in such a complex world where we need not only to discuss about technology, not only to discuss about the obvious things, but let's discuss about things which are not so usual, but can be source of advantage. And so I would say that, yes, diversity can give a competitive edge, diversity can provide benefits about innovation, benefits about the sincere dialogue and about thinking outside the box. And just to conclude, because we are still discussing in an SME environment, I think it's a question that we have to answer. Is diversity only about the numbers? I mean, is diversity important only for big organizations, only for huge global companies or associations? And I think not. I think diversity is not about numbers. Diversity is also about innovation and about culture, and we can search for diversity. We can go for diversity even in small organizations or in small and medium enterprises. So it is a topic for today. I mean, for our agenda. It is a topic not only for the big ones, but it's a topic also for the SMEs. And first of all, I think it is a topic for cooperation, for dialogue, because we have to discuss, we have to confront our ideas. God forbid that we are thinking the same. God forbid that we do not have the necessary diversity in this panel, but I think we have it. So I'm honored to have been asked to have these introductory remarks, and also I'm extremely eager to learn today. So my ears and eyes are open, and I'm sure I will learn a lot today together with you and from you. So good discussion I wish to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winkler, for these very inspiring words. And definitely, as you said, that we are in a connected and collaborative world. And of course, we have today with us representatives from international organizations. However, these international organizations can only function when they have a good cooperation, collaboration, and an effective working relationship with all the SMEs who are catering to their services and products. So thank you very much. So now this takes us to our keynote speaker, Mr. Jeffrey Gold, CEO of Star Alliance. And Star Alliance, as we all know, is an alliance of 26 member airlines, each with its distinctive culture. And Mr. Gore, yesterday, Star Alliance celebrated its 23rd birthday. So congratulations for that. And we are all eagerly waiting to learn from you. As Mr. Winkler said, it's a learning session also, learning from you and your experience in this very diverse but connected world. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shrita. I think people can hear me now. I see that my mute sign is off. So a very good morning for people in Europe, and I think from worldwide, good afternoon or very early morning for some, or good evening for others. I'm honored to have been invited to speak in whatever 10-15 minutes that I have, to perhaps share some dimensions of what we are going through as our industry, but also for Star Alliance itself as an organization, which is based in Frankfurt, and how we are in fact in the intersection of a much bigger global picture here. As Shrita introduced, we are 26 members, large or small, however you like to look at that. It's a very international business. And to Mr. Winkler's point about diversity, I don't think you need to be a big organization to be diverse in culture, in ethnicity, in gender for that matter. We are about 70 people based in Frankfurt, but of course, as an alliance, we have something like 500,000 employees across the globe. And we're very much what I would call the epitome, the summary of a very globalized, connected, and diverse business. And in the last 2 months or so, even though it's a cliche almost to say that we're in unprecedented times, it has really brought home to us in our industry, at least in the aviation industry, how much we have taken for granted the global world, the diverse world, and the connected world in which we live, and how this crisis is really threatening the globalized world we have, the physical connectivity that we've had, the cross-cultural interaction opportunities that we've had. And so I thought it's a great opportunity because there's none more clear than our business here and the business of international travel to share with you some of the challenges that we have faced and trying to then take the steps to recover. As Mr. Winkler introduced, we in a way is in the race, but I think that the aviation industry, unfortunately, Mr. Winkler, is going to be the last in the race because we were the first to be impacted, and I think we will be the last to come out just because of the way in which the crisis and the reactions and the responses have unfolded. And this has produced a particularly some unusual challenges and stern challenges for leadership in politics, in business, and in society, I would say, because somewhat different to those many crises that Mr. Winkler, you introduced, from the 9/11 terrorist crisis to the SARS crisis to the global financial crisis of almost 10 years ago. This is one that is somewhat all-comprehensive and is a combination of health and economics as a crisis. And so the responses that we have had to deal with, and I think whether you're small, medium, or large enterprises, are what I would say is of a different magnitude and of a different nature. When you look at terrorism of 9/11, it was very much about security. If you look at a global financial crisis, it was very much about financials. Here, it is global and it is health, and that touches everyone. It's not about the gentleman or the lady who is trying to board the aircraft with some liquid or gel, and then you say, well, you cannot go onto the aircraft with the liquid or gel because it's not safe. Here, you're dealing with something that is invincible. It's a virus that you just don't know of the 300 passengers on board the aircraft who has it. And so it impacts much more comprehensively than many of the crises that we have had to deal with before. And so I was thinking in the last couple of days as we were coming up to this discussion here, how I would characterize the way in which we have looked at this, perhaps not from a financial perspective, but how we've responded from a communications perspective, from an engagement perspective. And dare I say, as a small step to recovery, the charitable part of what we all can do in bringing a recovery to closer to us. And I try to frame this in how I would characterize the stages that we have been through as an industry. And one is, and each of which require different focus, different tonality in communications, different stakeholders at different in these two different phases of who you engage with. And I would describe these two phases as one of adjusting to the crisis and the other being adapting to the post-crisis new world. And that's really where the trajectory of recovery comes in. I think you can see a little slide there. I was trying to keep it simple of the connected world in which our industry, or at least our experience, have come to tell us our own existence and how we react to some of these stakeholders here. And I thought I'll just walk through how we have responded in the way of connecting with these different stakeholders in our universe. First and foremost, I mean, they're all in order, equal orders of importance, none more than another. From a customer perspective in our business, customers were once very connected. You get on the internet, you buy a ticket, in less than 24 hours, you're on a flight to wherever you want to go for business, for leisure, for visiting friends and relatives. All of a sudden, within 65 days, in a history of over 100 years, we suddenly become disconnected from nature, from pleasure, from friends, from relatives, and from business associates. And it was very important for us to find ways to keep our engagement with them continuing, trying to anticipate what their anxieties were, what their concerns were, what their frustrations were. You know, people who have elite status, you know, will I lose my status? So that's a concern, that's an anxiety we had to address. And then you've got those who are frustrated, those who are holding tickets, who couldn't get refunds. You know, it's a big topic right now, and you know, customers are getting vouchers instead of refunds. So a lot of frustrations that we had to anticipate and deal with, and in the magnitude or the volume that we've never confronted before. You have a flight that is canceled, you got 300 passengers, you can deal with that, right? You put them in a hotel, you rebook them. We're talking about billions of customers that fly in and out, and hundreds of thousands of tickets that need to be dealt with. What we also had to bear in mind about the recovery phase, as it were, as I said, the adapting to a new world phase, is how do we engage with the customers to help us shape the new world? Because with this particular crisis, unlike the global financial crisis, it was about economics, it was about finance. Unlike the security crisis, the 9/11 crisis, it was about putting security measures in place. Here, the experience, not just in travel, but I think we all accept that, you know, the new world is going to be very different for all of us, whether we go shopping in a supermarket or whether we take the train or whether we go get a haircut. What is that experience? What is that new world going to be? How can we reimagine that experience for the customers in our universe, in the travel universe? And so it's important for us to engage with them. So we went out to our customers, help us shape some of the thinking. What do you expect? You know, will you fly first class again? Do we need a first class product? Because money is going to be much more tight in the future. You know, do you expect food in the airport lounges to be on a buffet style with all these health concerns now, or should they be in packeted food and drinks? So I think it's important for us to bear in mind as we come out into recovery how we connect with the customers in helping us to shape the future. Then there are the employees. I mean, you know, no doubt about this, and both, I would say, the customers and the employees, however we engage with them, the very important theme for us was about empathy, particularly for employees that are based in different parts, in remote locations. And in this particular age, when we're in a lockdown, we have restrictions on movements, it's very easy to get disconnected with them. And it was very important for us to make sure that we don't lose that. And with this particular crisis, one of the very important underlying currents for us about why the need to make sure that wherever the employees are, from wherever they're working from, we had to manage expectations of anxiety about prospects of job, about prospects of employment in the future. I mean, there's no no secret, and I think, you know, the Winkler, you were talking about, you know, we need to make sure that the younger generation, the millennials, we continue to have employments, creative positions for them. In as much, in equal measure, people who are currently employed, how do we manage their expectations for what very likely there will be some painful experiences, unfortunately, at least in our industry. And so how do you connect with them to share with them a view of the future, the reimagined world, that they still have a role to play, that they can help to be part of history, that they can be part of rewriting the rule book as we move forward. And even in our industry, and you know, I think I would probably be one of the first ones to put my hands up. There are many aspects of our industry that are still legacy based. Much as we have been trying to transform the industry to be more modern, to be more digitalized, for example, there are areas where we are still kind of a legacy based. But the crisis has probably made us think about the things that we dare not think before, or we were not able to do before. Just like at the top of the digitalized world, you know, there was a view that even for the new generation, the millennial generations, some of these people coming through to the job market don't know what jobs exist yet, because some of the jobs don't exist yet. And I think post-crisis, this is what we need to look out for, that there actually will be jobs that don't actually exist today that will come on board as we come out the other side of this challenge. Then, of course, there are the shareholders, and I think, as small and medium enterprises, we all know how important this is to get connected to them about how we can continue as a going concern and what is our exit strategy coming out of that. So, and for Star Alliance in particular, if you have done some research or understand our network, we have shareholders and members stretching right across from New Zealand to Singapore to India to Ethiopia to Turkey to Poland to Germany, of course, to Portugal to Canada to United States to Panama and to Colombia. Significant need to make sure that there is connectivity, and I will tell you that I spend significant amount of time trying to connect with them to understand what's happening in their world and what we are doing that could also impact and support them. And it's not easy because New Zealand is about 12 hours away from here from a time zone perspective. Panama is about 7 hours behind us, and trying to get the conversations at the same time, trying to get the conversations going at the same time when they are themselves trying to focus on their own survival. It is interesting how disconnected some can be because they are so inward looking to survive themselves and not actually knowing what is happening in other parts of the globe. And so it's very important for us, as I said earlier at the beginning, we play a very important role at the intersection of that relationship of our shareholders. And then there are governments and authorities. Mr. Winkler, when you talked about a race to recovery, I was wondering whether you would touch on the issue of how the government and authorities are playing. And in our industry, at least, we have international agencies, we have multifaceted regulatory authorities, from Standard Setting Association, government associations, and World Health Organization, the European Aviation Safety Agency, you name it. Just about every four corners, we will have someone having an interest in the aviation industry. And the concern here was what role we can play in trying to make sure that whatever directions governments and authorities go, they don't end up with a framework that actually compromises the connected world that we have today. Right? I mean, already we've seen the border restrictions and border closures affect that. And if such rules and measures were necessary, how can we see them as temporary, only for the time being as required, and not to structurally change the way in which the world was connected before? And that's very important. We've, the role that we play in lobbying to make sure that we don't end up making the situation worse than it is already. And I would say sometimes that, when you have too many of these international or too many of these agencies working together, tensions will arise, fragmentation will arise, and everyone is trying to find a space on leadership. And then in the end, you actually don't get to anything because of the impasse. And that's very critical for us in our in industry, where borders are very important to promote connectivity and diversity. And then there are partners. I think particularly important for the SME universe. And when I mean partners, I prefer not to use the word suppliers and vendors. For us, we looked at them as partners, whether they're technology partners or just your cleaning partners. It is in times of crisis, in our view, when enduring partnerships come through. It is enduring partnerships that really stand the test of time, through the good and through the bad. And we want to be in the dialogue, in collaboration with existing partners and also new partners, and I'll come to that in a moment, about how they can be part of the solution as we come out of the recovery, as we enter into the recovery. And that's particularly important. And what we found ourselves is, as we engage with our current partners as to how we can play the recovery role together, we also discovered that we were beginning to engage with sectors and partners that we've never considered before. So we started engaging with global hotel alliances, with hotel chains about what their experiences are and where are they going in terms of recovery, because they're part and parcel of the travel and tourism sector. And then one that perhaps never crossed our minds in our day-to-day pre-crisis is the sanitization world, the cleaning world, the health world. And I find myself in the last 2-3 weeks actually engaged in dialogue with the International Sanitization Association. I never knew that such an association existed, but it was quite interesting to understand what role they have and how we can collaborate to explore opportunities that will protect the health and safety of our customers, our employees, and so on. So it's quite interesting. We are discovering organizations that we never knew existed, Biosecurity Global Council, for instance. And so that's been very exciting in making sure that we are also connected with parts of the world and partners that we never knew we would be engaged with them. And that lends a lot of, sort of diversity in knowledge as well for and then somewhat strangely, you might think, but we found ourselves having more conversations with our competitors. In trying to connect ourselves and find ways to support the recovery process. Because at the end of the day, this crisis for us in the aviation industry is that we're in this together and we have to come out of this together. That there are certain things that we are competitive about, but there are certain things that we don't need to be competitive about. For example, what kind of messages we can give to the world about safety, about health, about hygiene, that it is safe to travel. We have to find a way to message out to say that it is okay to travel because we've taken this and that measure to make sure that you as customers are safe to travel. So we find ourselves engaged with our competitors in terms of information exchange. What are you doing in terms of cleaning aircraft? What kind of standards are you using? So that's been quite illuminating in terms of our connected world, where we never thought that we would be so connected with our competitors. But I thought I'll throw that in because it's unusual to speak about connectivity and connected collaboration with competitors. Last but not least, I think as we look at the trajectory of recovery, it is important to address the core of the problem here, obviously, which is the health crisis. And as an aviation industry, we also recognize that many countries generally are challenged by the health infrastructure. And so many of our members within the industry, generally speaking, have contributed flights in taking medical staff, frontline healthcare workers, doctors all over the world to support different pockets of the world that have a healthcare infrastructural challenge. Many of our members, shareholders, employees are not working today, especially the pilots and the cabin crew, because there are no flights to fly. And so many of them have been volunteered out to society, even in the healthcare frontline, not necessarily handling the coronavirus patients, but because professional nurses and doctors are taken away to those coronavirus patients, these employees of the airlines are out there in the front line of, at the reception or general medical cases, helping out in providing care, essentially. And also in other sectors, trying to help the authorities enforcing social distancing. We've had employees of some of our airlines working at underground stations, train stations, or volunteering, I would say, trying to help people social distance, to educate them about social distancing. So all these employees have been deployed in different ways in trying to support the community, so that we get, kind of better and faster to support the recovery. These are transporting personnel and people, but there's also supplies and equipment where many of our the industry is helping to transport these things. And in a way also, I would say that some airlines are beginning to say thank you to these frontline workers, to make sure that they can be recognized for the work that they're doing, for the risk that they're taking, and giving them free travel, free ticket to be connected again with their families, to be able to connect again with with nature, with pleasure. And so you see recently some airlines offering up to 10,000 tickets, 100,000 of tickets to healthcare frontline workers, frontline healthcare workers, to recognize them, to reconnect them with people and places. And so I think as part of the recovery steps, it's also important that the airlines contribute back to the society in making sure that we can be better and faster. So that's kind of a little bit of a nutshell of the universe of stakeholders with which we had to make sure that we don't lose that connectivity with them, and also build new diverse relationships with people that we've never thought we would before. But I thought, as a sort of a closing, I'm sure there are many questions, and we will take them in a moment. But I thought I'll just add a couple of reflections, or well, reflections, I suppose, in closing this out. In these two phases of adjusting and adapting to the post-crisis new world, for what I've just described or explained, all of that actually is not really a walk in the park. During these 2-3 months, we have never been busier. Interestingly enough, I'm sure when we look back and write our autobiography, we will be asking the question of how come we were so busy these 2-3 months than we've ever been. But some of the things I think are explained by the novel challenges that we've never had to deal with before, obviously. And one of them is the speed with which events were unfolding, almost on a daily basis. You know, you wake up the next morning, you see, Vietnam has put international borders, has raised international restrictions. The next day you wake up, United States have said that European travelers cannot go into the United States anymore. And so you're dealing with this almost on the run to try to cope. And with so much that is happening, it is a challenge to retain the focus, because we found ourselves that if you were not focused with so much going on, you could be very easily overwhelmed by the tasks, by the events, by information. You know, everyone is trying to publish everything. You ask people today, so when will recovery for aviation happen? You ask 10 people, you get 101 answers. You know, and so that's, you know, how do you sift through the relevant from the less relevant? And then importantly enough is also to your employees aligned to what is, I wouldn't say the truth, but at least what is the vision and the message for the organization, because you know, they can be pulled in all different directions, particularly those at remote locations. And then one thing I would add, perhaps we'll hear what the audience have to say as well, is during this crisis or emergency, as we respond to it, I would say that we should not underestimate the need to have to make things up as we go along, and how that impacts your governance, your corporate governance, particularly corporate governance policy, corporate governance processes, because you really have to react quite quickly to some of these challenges. And the temptation is often striking the balance of, do you improvise or do you fiddle with time-tested governance that you already have in trying to respond to a unique situation? So I'm sure, you know, people will have different experiences about that, but I thought I'll just throw that in. So that's kind of some of the challenges. And for us as an industry, and I'm sure you alluded to as well, Mr. Winkler, in your introduction, is as we try to exit, what is a strategy for exit? And I would tell you that at least for our industry, it is awfully difficult. You can have scenario planning all day long and all night long. Some of these scenarios may never even come close, because you're trying to second guess what governments are going to do. And we're talking about 200, 300 countries in the world, and what each of those governments are going to do, particularly in the international aviation business, where crossing borders is a fact, and dependence on international borders is also a fact. And so that has been an interesting challenge from a leadership perspective, at least for the aviation industry. I could have thought how we reestablish connectivity again. So my really a closing word here, I'd say, is that as much as I say we're in a cliche of unprecedented times, but I think there's also a very useful view that I tell our people, our staff, our members, our shareholders, and others, which is that never let a crisis go to waste. In as much as it is bad and we're all struggling today and the doomsday are here, but in as much as it is a crisis, it is also a path to new opportunities. There should not be any sacred cows. We should dare to do things that we perhaps never dared to do before. And then, perhaps greater diversity will come out of that, both in terms of knowledge and experiences and interaction. So that's I leave it at that. Let's not waste the crisis. So thank you very much for that 15 minutes or so. Delighted to have been able to share some perspectives from our side. Back to you, Sweeta.
Yes, thank you very much, Jeffrey. This was really, very authentic way of sharing your experience. You connected different points. At the beginning, you started, when the crisis came, how you decided, how can we continue? And then you commented on, connecting customers, getting connected with your competitors, and going through different experience. I just would, before we continue, I just will have one question. The last one you said is that let us not waste it. It is also the time for identifying new opportunities. And it is so very difficult when you say this to many people who are in different situations and phases of life, identify new opportunities. What will be your message? How would you encourage them to identify new opportunities?
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Well, Sweeta, it's a great question. It's almost a $64,000 question, and I think everyone has the ability to be challenged in identifying new opportunities. I will say that even in the aviation world, right? Will you look for? Are you, as a customer in the future world, going to be happy mingling around with 30,000 people, 45,000 people in the airport terminal? Or would you be looking for some sanctuaries, kind of a space that you can buy or you can go to, like we have for smoking rooms, for example, but maybe it's a sanctuary for you to kind of have some quiet moments before you go to the airport. So there are multiple opportunities, from insurances to protect against travel disruption, because you don't know whether you have the virus and suddenly you land in the country, you're taken on a temperature and you have a high temperature and they deny entry. How do you go back and what's the cost of coverage? So I think there are lots of opportunities, but I want to say, this is not without empathy, obviously, that sometimes it is difficult to see beyond our own noses. Sometimes it's difficult to see beyond the doom and the gloom today. And the aviation industry is not immune from that, even though, we are all talking about recovery, but a lot of the recovery is also about how the business is going to restructure, and there will be casualties, regrettably. And I think that's important that it is important that we manage the expectations of that. But equally, I think from a leadership perspective, as we identify or as we reimagine the new world, we also need to look to see how we slot people in, where the new world has no role for them, but where the old world has no role for them, but the new world has. And how do we adapt them? How do we retrain them? How do we build new competencies for these people? And I think, if they're willing to be adaptable, if they're willing to be flexible and nimble, then I think there are a lot of opportunities. There are opportunities for this.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sure we will come back to you when we go to the Q&A session. Before I start our discussion with other voices from industry and politics, I have a question for our host, Mr. Winkler. EU is the best example of unity in diversity. And, you know, at this particular stage, I think it's very, very important that politics and business in international context, they learn from each other, they work with each other in different phases, especially in the exit phase. So what is EU's responsibility and how should, what should be the role to enhance international business and trade further? You heard about the border challenges, the different debates which are going on at national and social level. I think it's an emotional topic. So how can, I mean, what will be EU's role in international context in spite of all the local challenges which is happening today?
Well, thank you very much for this question. It's really a deeply political one and involves a lot of responsibility because, as I see it, the gravity of this crisis comes from the following contrast and contradiction. This is a crisis in which life and livelihood is in contradiction. If we want to save lives, then we jeopardize livelihood because we will continue the lockdown, we will continue the severe measures, we don't have a cure and we don't have a vaccine. And we will not have in the following month neither a cure nor a vaccine. That is what scientists are telling us. Scientists and researchers tell us that they need some month, maybe as long as 1 year, 8 months, 9 months. I don't know exactly. I'm not a scientist. I'm just reading and believing their analysis. So if we need 1 more year to have a vaccine, if we need 1 more year to understand this coronavirus really and to know how to take care of lives, then we will jeopardize livelihood ongoing. So health crisis and economic crisis. And of course, it's the responsibility of politics to make decisions. And decision cannot be black or white. Decision has to be balanced, and we have to be very clever. We all discover now, as Mr. Gogh said, the new world of sanitization, safety measures, safety tools. And probably we will have to take decisions on political level to strike for the right balance. 3 issues. Globalization cannot stop, should not stop, and will not come to a halt. So we have to fight as a European Union to safeguard the global institutions. And we see that we have attacks on global institutions, on WTO, on the World Health Organization, on the IMF, on the World Bank. All the global organizations are under attack. I think even we have to modernize them, even if we have to restructure them, but we have to save them, because we cannot go back to a 20th century world of protectionism and of isolation. So let's save together globalization. We have to shape it, but we have to save it. Then second issue, smart regulation. We have temporary measures, but we do not want to overburden neither the small companies nor the big ones, neither the global companies nor other stakeholders. So what we need is smart regulation. And third, we need a very strong, as European Union, we need a very strong recovery plan. We have introduced flexibility measures. Everything is very well, but we have already spent all the money from the European Union budget, which ends this year in December. We don't have a new 7 years budget. We just voted an hour ago in the European Parliament. We are in the plenary session of the Parliament. I don't know if distinguished colleague Bergqvist, he is at home in Sweden or he is in Brussels. I'm at home in Romania. And we just voted on the recovery plan, our Parliament position. We are expecting now the institutions to cooperate. We are expecting the European Commission to make a new proposal for the 7 years budget, starting in January 1st next year. So I think many issues, but these 3 main points, and only one comment I would like to show about competition, you know, and many wise words of Mr. Koch. I can show you something. I don't know if you recognize it. I'm waiting very much. This is a Star Alliance membership card. So I'm waiting eagerly that you start your flights to Brussels. But I have to tell you sincerely, if KLM starts first, then I will take their flight. So it's natural, especially that the Romanian national carrier is member of the other alliance of KLM Air France. So it's a competition. I wish you good luck. And not only that I'm wishing good luck, I think that all the members of the European Parliament, we had already, as you know very well, aviation issues on our agenda. Also the Social Democratic Group, Mr. Bergqvist, my colleague, but myself, the EPP, and I think that the whole European Parliament is very aware about the fact that your industry is a crucial industry, not just for our travel to the European Parliament, but also for the whole global environment, economy, trade, tourism, and eventually our society and our way of life in the 21st century.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we are discussing about many things which we need to do, and we need definitely people and talents and expertise for that. And now I come with this to our next speaker, Ursula Schwarzenbart, who is the Global Diversity and Talent Development Manager and Officer of Daimler. And whenever I think of the word diversity, it automatically connects me to Ursula. She's not only responsible for the topic at Daimler, but she implanted diversity over there. And so Ursula, at the end of the day, we all would like to earn money, be profitable, make profits, and that's very obvious in business. However, to achieve that in good as well as in bad days, we need talents, people, team, skills, competencies. And building up diverse teams, we should not wait till the next crisis comes. So what is your message for us?
Thank you, Srita, for that kind introduction, and hello, everybody. I'm happy to share with you what our experiences have been in the last months. And I start with March 13th. March 13th, 2020 was the last day of our past, I would say, meaning that at March 14th, we shut down all the plants, not only in Germany, but also in other regions of the world. And we had a 2-week period of not working at all. And only those who had the opportunity to use home offices could do a little bit of work, but those in the production lines are on short-time work now, and they will stick on short-time work because not only of the production and the downturn of the auto industry, but also for health reasons, because we have to make sure that they have the opportunity to stay distant. We had to change the shifts, and we had to make sure that people understood that the work is not going to be the same as it has been before March 13th, and it will stay different. So suddenly, both our employees as well as our manager had to cope with changed circumstances. From one day to another, literally, there's no one working like he or she has ever worked before. Just today, I had the opportunity to change my company car. And when I came in, it was such a different environment with all the glass and with the people with the masks, and we were lining up outside. I'm lucky enough that it wasn't raining. And, you know, everything is literally looking different than it was before. And I think it will stay like this. It will be a different world, what we are currently going into. So the mobile working did definitely change not only the way we are working, it changed also the way families are living together. Especially if we look into what is happening in the families, we see that people who are supposed to do their home office, they are also supposed to do the homeschooling if they are parents. They are supposed to live with their partners in a different manner. They have to organize their days, and it's absolutely different to everything what has been before. So that does mean that especially leading a group of people which you have not seen for a couple of months now is absolutely different than working together with your colleagues in your offices. That means at the end of the day, we need to build skills on how to digitize management and how to digitize leadership. That does mean that our managers do have to come up with a different perspective on how they lead their people. So if we look into that, we see that there is a huge uncertainty on the mental side. The uncertainty is on management as well as it is in the employees. They are thinking about, if I'm working from home, is this really what my company wants? The managers are thinking, are my employees really doing what they are supposed to do? And they are all threatened about what is happening to their jobs. And this is where we see that we definitely need to evolve the competencies of our managers so that they understand that this kind of stress, which is now put into the people, definitely has to be overcome in a certain manner, and that they have to deal with people who are threatened, with people who are stressed out, and with people where they have to care about their health. So that's why we have in our organization implemented not only the crisis management, but also the health system. And we are keeping up everything so that people who feel certain anxieties, especially in this crisis, can call and make sure and have conversations about their threats and how to overcome that. So, but if I look into what could be the new normal, I would like to say that I have one example which I found personally very interesting, because it shows how the management style in this company was functioning and how we have to cope with the new situation. There was one manager in our organization who had like 250 people reporting into him, and he found out that his colleagues had spent a weekend on a hotspot, on a coronavirus hotspot. And he decided that it would be a good idea to put them into quarantine, and meaning these 250 people. And I think he was trying to do something really good, and he was cautious, and he was really looking after his people, but he somehow forgot that he's not alone in the world. Meaning he really didn't talk to his manager, he didn't talk to the workers' council, which is necessary in Germany to talk to if you want to come up with some changes. And he got into trouble because of this. And I think it was not right to give him trouble for this, because of course he was trying to do something good. But it shows on the other side that exactly in situation where we get under stress, we have the thought that we know how to manage that and that we come to a decision fast and we just execute this without really thinking about what should we do to connect the dots and to make sure that everything is working out nicely. But this also shows for me that we are going to be in a situation where we don't need the single hero mentality any longer. We don't need the lonesome riders who are taking the decisions. We need to have people who are connected with each other, and we have to make sure that those people are really really looking after each other and making sure they understand what the circumstances are, and that we come to better decisions because we are involving not only people with different backgrounds, but also people who do have different experiences. And of course, Mr. Go, we are also working with our competitors because no one of us has been in a crisis like this before. And there's no competitive advantage how we overcome the crisis. We definitely have to all do the same things. And that's why we are still strongly connected with each other. So let me switch into how could we go to the new normal. And I think the new normal will be less on-site work and more digital work. I think the new normal will also be, sorry to say that, Mr. Go, less business trips. I think this is going to be the future because it has strongly put us suddenly into the situation where we cannot say, okay, let's go for a trip and figure out in a 1.5 day meeting what's going on in Japan or wherever in the world. And now we know we can do it via Zoom or link or whatsoever, and that it is still working. So I think this is going to be a big difference for us. And what we have to do, at least, and I'm coming from the automobile sector, which is still a male-dominated area, we have to make sure that our managers are becoming more sensitive to diversity, to diverse thoughts, but also more sensitive, even if they are online, to understand what people are thinking, where they are standing emotionally, because they have to deal with those people and they have to make sure they are not losing the talent and that they are still working on how to evolve those people. And I think this is going to be a huge challenge for many of our managers. So having said that, the question is, how are we prepared, or how were we prepared? And I must admit, we were prepared and we were doing a lot of preparational work to see the automobile industry transforming. So of course we know, and we all can read that every day in the newspaper, that the automobile industry is under big pressure. We were not prepared for a pandemic. So, but nevertheless, making ourselves aware of the changes we are facing in the coming decade, I would say we did a lot of things. And one of the things we did a couple of years ago was implementing the strategic diversity management. Because if you think about, you would have like a more homogeneous workforce, that would really be in big trouble, not only in a large organization as well as in a smaller organization, because they would all think the same, go into the same direction, and not really value what is coming up in the situation. And this is not only a female or a gender statement, this is especially concerning a large organization like ours, saying this is also a dimension of internationality and having international people on board. The other thing is that we implemented an initiative which was called Leadership 2020, and which was composed on a worldwide basis on diversity criteria. We had like 30% women, 60% people outside of Germany, through all generations, through all management levels, who were creating, so to say, a wishful future for the organization. And everything this group has put together, and it were at the end, it were over 1,000 people who involved themselves in that initiative. And we were putting them together and gave them the opportunity to shape what they call the transformation of our company. And it is about digitization, it is about HR development, it's about feedback, which I found very interesting. People were saying we are not getting enough feedback, and I think we will get a lot of feedback right now, and therefore it is a absolutely necessary initiative to somehow prepare your organization to be more diverse. And this does also include that we have more agile management in our organization, and that we are exactly like you mentioned it, we are going from day to day. You go to bed one day, you wake up the other day, and you see suddenly things have changed and you have to cope with it. And this is, especially in a very engineering environment, something a lot of engineers hate to do. They need to have their plan, they are going towards their plan, and they are shaping the future exactly how they planned that 3 years, 5 years before. So I think this is really something our managers have really to learn and really to understand, that this disruption is making them agile managers, because you have to be different every day. And especially when it comes to top management decisions, I think it's absolutely crucial that you have diverse people in your top management. Other than that, it's not going to work out at all. So we, of course, have also the corporate-wide crisis team, which is meeting regularly, and we have included people from all over the world, including also gender issues here, because you can imagine, as a large organization, childcare is a absolutely crucial thing for us, and we are, by the way, one of the biggest childcare providers in Germany, and therefore we have to really cope with the idea what we can do and how we can support our families, not only the women, also the men. So if I look into that, and to sum it up, I would say, what are we going to see? We are going to see more co-creation and more agile processes in the future. The pace of digitization will tremendously increase, because I think we will deal for a long time with home offices. Mobile working is going to increase, and we have to rearrange everything which is around family support and about the support of our employees in that stressful situation. But besides all of that, I think at the end of the day, we need to trust and have the confidence that our co-workers have the ability to really also contribute through the crisis and do the best for the company to survive. And I think trust is one of the things which is the most difficult thing to give in management, especially if you have the idea that you don't have it under control as you usually do. With that, I would leave it for now. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Ursula, for these inspiring words. I'm catching different things from your talk: strategic diversity management in terms of crisis management with a diverse team, and you also said that the pace of digitalization will increase a lot, and we will now come back definitely later on to you with our questions. But this digitalization is taking us to our next speaker, and he is from this particular industry. Welcome, Anand Padmanabhan. You are at present in Bangalore, so good afternoon to you. and the president of a very, very big multinational organization, which is Wipro Technologies. And they are IT software and technology solution providers. And Wipro means, 110 countries with more than 150,000 people. So remote working is nothing actually something strange for your business, but this will be very interesting to understand how you have managed your agenda in the last weeks, where we were asked to be flexible and at the same time structured. So Anand, thank you for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shrita. And I need to apologize upfront because I think, like you said, we're supposed to be remote working, but I seem to be having some bandwidth problem right now. And it's not happened in the last 2 months. It seems to be happening now. Hopefully, I should go through my session, and I will keep it very short. So, there are three things the way we look at it. Fundamentally, just before the crisis, as we were all talking across the industry, across the globe, by way of digitization, right? People were going through a change. People were automating, using IoT devices, machine learning, doing a whole lot of things on an automated manner. So that could have meant, that was meaning a challenge to the workforce by large, right? People were forced to reskill themselves, were figuring out what else they should be doing, what is their future in the new way of doing things, etc., etc. Organizations were reimagining how do they connect with their customers, right? And like what Ursula said, more and more customers were using devices, and devices were getting proliferated, and everybody were dealing with everybody using some device or the other, right? So by virtue of it, a whole lot of things were getting connected, and digitization was by nature the future of every industry's survival. And people are going through that process for the last 3 years. And by virtue of that, I think, we were looking at a whole lot of automation, devices or communication devices, or manufacturing organizations doing industry 4.0, airlines operating with remote management, etc., etc. And the only virus that all of us were really worried about was the virus which were the virus in the IT system, not really this particular virus. And nobody foresaw this thing coming. But fundamentally, we were all bothered about building a highly secure device network, which will ensure that we are able to operate on a digital world, right, across all the industry. Now, having said that, this crisis has brought the focus back in terms of saying, hey, listen, the type of organizations which will survive, and this is based on our communication with a lot of our customers across the globe, is the type of organizations which will survive will be the organizations which will come out with a significantly accelerated digital process as we go along, right? So this is going to be accelerating the digitization for across the industry. We are also seeing a lot of organizations fighting for survival, right? Which is also meaning, what do we do with the workforce? First and foremost, we were all planning to reskill the workforce. Now, what do we do with the workforce? Would probably be rendered unemployment because of the crisis in the industry for a period of couple of years. The third biggest challenge, and I think which is more a socioeconomic challenge, is about the kids and the students who are going to come out of university this year, right? And they're probably the most unfortunate because they are the guys who are coming out in a place which is where we are seeing significant amount of unemployment in the current workforce, and the business is slowing down, and the kids coming out with a completely uncertain future. And by virtue of digitization, one is expecting all the industry to adopt new kids and adopt new way of doing things. And we all need newer generations to give us new ideas and new thoughts and new way of doing things. Now, these are the 3-4 things that I think are topmost in the mind of every organization. What do we do with the new employment? How do we take in new kids out of the universities and make them employed in the quickest possible time frame, right? At the same time, how do we help organizations become more digital? And how do we help them operate in a completely remote, virtual, global, distributed environment, right? And we believe that, as we go along, the workforce will become more global and will be more spread across the world in a virtual environment. And you will not necessarily have people in a specific office working together. It could be people across multiple offices or multiple homes working on a virtual environment. Now, how do we create a collaborative work environment which will enable us to become more productive, at the same time more profitable, at the same time get things done in the shortest possible manner? So some of these challenges are, the good thing about it is the digital advancement in the digital world was happening at a pretty rapid pace, right? And which should help us in terms of adopting an environment where we can actually work on a remote virtual environment and collaborate like what we are doing right now. We can have a video conferencing with multiple people across the world, or we can have similar collaborative environment which will enable people to build products, build technology, build processes by way of people sitting across the world, right? So I think the second thing which will happen is also people may not be employed by location. People would probably be employed by virtue of their meritocracy, right? And their capability to deliver an outcome to a particular project or to a particular outcome that the organization is wanting to get to. So I think, so by what that means is you'll probably get people for a short period of time, and you'll build a virtual team, and you'll actually get into an outcome, and then people would be able to go into a different projects as given point of time. So it's all people on demand, skills on demand would become the part of the future. We are already seeing a whole lot of crowdsourcing initiative, which is picking up significantly across the world. And crowdsourcing by virtue is like Uberization of labor, right? It is like you actually pick up a particular skill for a particular job, and then you sort of let go of that skill, and that skill then goes and delivers to some other customer, right? So you sort of on and switch off capability, and these capabilities are spread across the world. So if you want a data scientist, and the data scientist could be probably sitting in Atlanta in his home and delivering a project in Germany for a period of 2 weeks, and then goes and delivers another project to somebody else. So fundamentally, the Uberization of labor is to get accelerated by virtue of these challenges. The biggest challenge as we see getting out of this crisis is in terms of the socio-economic challenges that we talked about, right? I think most of the governments across, and we are experiencing this across the globe, whether it's US, Canada, Latin America, India, we are seeing governments adopting a posture of how do we protect employment here? How do we make sure the kids coming out of the universities are gainfully employed? How do we make sure that, at the same time, not lose the competitive edge to any other country or any other region? So how do we get about doing that? From a technology world, like you said, Shrita, we are about 180,000 people. We are spread across 100 countries. So by nature, we have been working with people across the world, right? So for us, it doesn't seem to be so new or so unusual. In fact, just for the state of statistics, the moment the crisis started, and we had 160,000 people in customer projects, some working in customer side, some working out of our offices, and this is about 80 odd countries, right? So we were able to move them to their home. Almost 95% of the people were working from home within a week, right? And we didn't drop a single SLA across the customer set. So it was not so difficult to move them home and make them work. The challenge is, how do we get connected? How do we stay connected? I think Jeffrey mentioned in terms of the morale of the employees, right? I mean, people are now not working in a team in an office, but they're sitting at home alone. Now, how do we make sure that they are all connected, they are all motivated, they are all delivering to the common objective, and they're all, and it's consistent. And the fact of the matter is, none of us either here or in that 160,000, or for the matter, 7 billion people have ever gone through this crisis ever in their lifetime, right? So everybody is getting used to saying, listen, I'm sitting at home now, and I need to work on this project with 10 other guys who are probably spread across 4 continents. And the customer is expecting certain outcome, and the customer's employees are also probably sitting in their home. So how do we build a collaborative work environment and work, and how do we keep them motivated? So the key thing here is for us is, once we moved almost 95% of the people work from, I think the next 5% took us about 2 weeks because of, logical stuff in terms of data security, in terms of customer assets and so on and so forth. But I think it's about 99% work from home now. We believe that as we go along, at least in the technology industry, I think at least 60 to 70% of the people can continue to work from home in the next foreseeable future, which would be in the next 4 or 5 years time, right? And continue to deliver the same productivity, if not more, which would also mean that there will be a significant deployment of collaborative tools and technology and secure environment, which will make them work. The thing is, we need to skill the managers to make sure that people are motivated. We need to skill the managers to make sure they monitor the progress of the projects and make sure they keep everybody aligned, and the communications are done at more frequent than what was happening before. So those are the key challenges right now. The the last challenge in this portion would be to basically ensure that we are able to hire people in every geography, right? And there are different cultures, different languages, different genders, and how do we onboard in the quickest possible time frame and get them trained in the methodology of the organization, methodology of delivering a project in an agile, global agile delivery methodology. And this is something new for everybody. It's new for organizations like us. It's new for the kids coming out of universities. So how do we get everybody aligned in the quickest possible time in this particular environment? So it's going to be a nice, good challenge. Everybody is sort of, challenge generally excites people, I would think, right? So everybody is sort of excited in terms of saying, how do we raise up to this and how do we deliver an outcome to the industry? And, the last thing here would be every industry that we are seeing is going through a survival crisis. Like Jeffrey mentioned, the airports, airlines are in probably one of the worst hit. But we are also seeing the other side where people are saying, listen, in the new way of doing things, there could be a significant upside potential, both in terms of business outcomes, both in terms of productivity. People can probably be more productive in a conference like this than probably if you were flying into a place and spending 2 days flying in, flying out to do a seminar like this, right? So fundamentally, how do we reimagine the new way of doing things? How do we become more productive at the same time not lose our business potential? So those are the key challenges from an industry perspective. Very interesting time, Shrita. And I'll keep this short here and open to any questions, any answers, and any thoughts around this.
So thank you very much, Anand. I think the digitalization, software, high-tech industry, in terms of our work and life, is gaining a new meaning and momentum. So we have to watch what are the new opportunities arising for your organization, for others who are connected with you. And I think you said something which is important, that after this, each and every industry, each and every organization, it may be automotive, aviation, IT, high tech, each and every function and role will get some new features. So the skills, capabilities will have to be defined for each and every function and role. And so it was very, very nice listening your experience from different industry background. And now I am coming, and it's a real pleasure to welcome Mr. Eric Bergqvist, who is member of the European Parliament, and he is member of the Regional Development Committee. He is also member of the delegation to Russia and China. And he's a long-term member of the European Parliament, representing the Social Democrats from Sweden. Sweden, the word.
Sweden, yeah.
It means, for me, the land of diversity, the land of diverse opportunities. You have a very unique way of dealing with it. And maybe this unique way led you to decide to go along with the crisis in a different manner, in terms of going along with your people, going along with the society, compared to the rest of Europe. So, Mr. Bergqvist, it will be really a pleasure to understand your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much. I'm online now.
Yes.
Yes, very good. So, hello from Umeå, Sweden. Yes, I'm still at home, 2,000 kilometers away from Brussels. And just to underline what have been said before, communication infrastructure is really important. For me right now, it would be almost impossible even to get to Brussels, because we are so dependent on airlines to get there. And I looked in well, it's SAS and Star Lines here as well. So I looked, and I've been flying 10 times around the Earth the last year. So I'm really dependent on working flight conditions in that sense. No, we've chosen another way, and well, I'm not an expert in that, but the simple way to look at this, we didn't really know how to lock up a society when you've done a lockdown. So we decided not to try to lock it down, because then we would probably have easier way after that. Right or wrong, in a couple of years, I'm sure we will know. In my region, for example, where we have 207,000 people and the size of Belgium, it's quite easy to keep the distance. It's plenty of space. But I have a life before the European Parliament. I was 13 years serving as responsible for regional development in my region. The most important thing, and that we spent most time with, was actually SMEs. How to get the SMEs working even more, how to attract new SMEs, and how to help creating new SMEs in that sense. And then one very important, well, I would say we were reminded of all the time that everything happens local. Even in the global world, everything happens somewhere. It is people who are doing the change, who are doing the innovation, who are developing the companies that actually drives the whole welfare society. Meaning, and I was also involved in giving loans, giving grants, and also risk capital during this time. And we had 2 criteria before we gave any support to a company. The first was, is there a good idea? A new company, of course. Do we think it's a good idea? Is it a market for it? And the other one was, is there a person in this company who will lie sleepless, or at least just before he or she falls asleep, and as soon as they wake up, worries about how will this company develop? And that is, of course, the entrepreneur. If there isn't an entrepreneur in a company, a new started company, there will be no company regardless of good ideas. Another thing, and then I instantly fall in love with Jeffrey's expression, don't waste this crisis. It is, of course, that there are possibilities. And what we saw, and especially in, or I would say only in SMEs, that there are lots of ideas to inventions, how to develop the company, but there is no time and there is no resources, because very seldom they have a really developed research and development department. So they put all these ideas in the drawers, and when the order books are full, they don't have no time, and when we go into recession, they have no money. So I think that is one thing we have to really look at. What are all these ideas that are in the drawers? How can we help these SMEs now to develop all these ideas so that actually we can come out of this crisis stronger? And another observation is when you look at the healthcare, is people are working like maniacs there. But when I talk to a lot of them, they say, finally, we get to do our work. And then what do you mean? I said, well, we are sometimes so burdened by policies, working place meetings, this and that. So we don't have time to do our work. Now all focus is solve this task, solve the problem with too few intensive care places and other things like that. So a lot of, I would say, decision steps are taken away, and meaning that, and I understand Ursula, that she's also talking about this, let the experts be experts, let the ones know what it's all about, let them have more influence on how the work can be developed. And if we can carry that with us, and it's not just the healthcare I hear this from, but from a lot of other companies that have full hands right now, they are focusing on their work, they're very happy, and all ideas are in a way let loose. So there are possibilities in this crisis. So can we take this with us? Very, very good, I would say. And then also, I think in all this, and it has been said, we need a plan. We need to think about this really closely, but we can't have one plan for Europe or world or Sweden, because it's so diverse already, as you said. It's so heterogeneous already. And even in my own region, I see I can't have one plan that will work in whole the region. So we have to tailor-made plans now when we will try to resurrect Europe after this crisis. And this means that we have to have contact with the regional developers, companies, and the regional and the local developers and companies when we put this into work. Otherwise, we will not use the resources in a very efficient way. So we need this really multi-level approach now. Otherwise, we will waste a lot of money, waste a lot of time, and waste a lot of, and also create a lot of human suffering. The state in most part of Europe before the crisis also, and I think we have remembered that, because in a couple of years that will be our problem again, the lack of certain competences in companies, the mismatch. And we know that we can't supply Europe itself. We have a demographic crisis in Europe. So we have to look, how can we have a migration that works? And we also, when we educate people and be competitive, because we can see the threat now, both challenges and threats. Because China is putting forward their positions, both on company side, but also on the political side. How can EU, that is still one of the world's largest economy, how can we handle this? So all in this crisis, this horrible crisis, has also let loose a lot of creativity, I would say, and lots of ideas. So let's try to keep those ideas and most learn what were the processes, the good processes that helped us in this really uncertain situation. So if there is one lesson, I think, from this, and also one thing that we should carry with us, is that we need a plan, of course. We need to know where we're going, but we also have to be aware this plan might and will have to change with a very short notice. And we have to be very, very adaptive. So we have to be short-sighted and adaptive if we are to create this and see that we are diversified. And we need, and it's been said by Go and it's been said by Ursula, we need all the people. We need a greater mix in the European companies. We need more equality. We can't just let half of the population be outside of the workforce. So, and when we do all these things, then we have processes, we have companies that are open to ideas, then we will be able to take the next step. Because this crisis, even though we've never seen it before, it is a strong structural crisis. Things that were going on have now been accelerated, and we will come out to a new world. In a couple of years, we will eventually discover that as well. So we have to be very, very adaptive. We have to be prepared to cooperate even more, but we have to be prepared also to constantly evaluate what we're doing and to quickly change and adapt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. These were really very, very interesting how you connected business and the real time with the people. And this was very interesting. And I personally think that, I mean, for my own experience, when this particular phase started, I took a day or two and I just thought that, you know, we all need to have a very flexible mind to develop an agenda for tomorrow. And at the same time, it's a huge learning opportunity. I said to myself, I have my objectives and goals set at the beginning of the year. Definitely, I have to make some adjustments. However, I need to define new ways, new approaches, and new methods to achieve those objectives and goals, get connected, review my network, bring value to my network, and try to develop a collaborative approach. And that is very, very important. I don't know if we have questions, if you have time for Q&A. However, I personally would like to give it to Horst Heitz, who is the Executive Director of SME Europe and Chair of the SME Connect Committee, for maybe Q&A or concluding remarks. I'm just getting some signals that time is actually over. By the way, while describing Horst, he is really the right person with the right experience background for this particular topic, a Swiss at home in Munich, working in Brussels. So you can understand he's an international citizen. And Horst, thank you also to you and your team for organizing this talk, and I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Srita. I have to say thank you for the initiative for this webinar. I have to say you are a special representative for diversity, one of the most active special representatives, because it's also voluntary work. You do this for free in the interest of SMEs. Thank you very much that you are so active. I have also to say thank you to Mr. Udo Winkler and Eric Bergquist. We can be happy that we have members in the parliament who have an understanding for entrepreneurs and also an understanding for SMEs, because they are special. And I would not say they are different, because entrepreneurship is everywhere, but they have special needs. And I have to say I was also very impressed about the presentation from Mr. Jeffrey Go, because diversity is not only related to the team, it's the core, but it's a diversity is a strategy, is the lifeblood of economy. In fact, if it's once really be successful, not only national, not only global, but also national. We have to think in regions, and this is, I think, very important. I have to say also Mrs. Schwarzenbart and Pandin Manapan. I have to say, yes, this is really, I see what this means to handle this crisis in the digital world. I have to say SMEs are behind. We are suffering at the moment because before only 50% of the SMEs had a website. And I have to say it's starting, Mr. Bergquist, in the communities to help SMEs to go online by the cities and how to sell via the e-commerce channels. And I have to say we were behind this. We underestimated, and we had no deadline, like for the climate crisis, where we want to go forward. And I have to say, diversity, I have to say the champions, real champions of diversity are SMEs, because 2/3 of the new employment are by SMEs. 9 of 10 trainees are educated, trained by SMEs. And it means this is the difficult part of diversity, because the small SMEs, 99.2% in Europe are less than 5 employees. Means in their businesses, they are not all high-tech businesses. They will taking really people who have also difficulties. We saw this in the refugee crisis. 90% of the refugees were trained by SMEs. And we have that also, by the way, by the positive sides of diversity, also, of course, cultural conflicts. And for SMEs, this is always hard to handle. And we need help, mediators who can transfer this, because small teams can handle this much more difficult if you are only 4 or 5 than big companies who have somebody who can mediate and so on. But I have to say, we have also a huge of benefits, because SMEs get very good young educated people, especially from Eastern Europe. But sometimes it's also a problem, because diversity means also that it must be fair in global way, because otherwise we have brain drain. We have also the problem that we don't use always the people who are well educated from every region, what they can. This is brain waste. And I have also to say, if we go one level higher, diversity must be also in the supply chains and also in the partners. And this is always good, because the large companies are partners from SMEs. They are suppliers or they are clients. They're working together. And I can always encourage large companies to work together with SMEs. They are innovative. They have really competition, and they are in the regions. And I have to say, this is really also part of the diversity, because SMEs are diverse, and also large companies should work with them together. I have to say thank you very much to this very important topic. I think I'm not only, also my wife is from Ukraine, so it is completely, but I have to say, will be also the new reality. The people will become diverse also of the story of life. I think this we have to take in account in the companies.
So there is one question, Horst, from Mr. Bergquist, right? So
you have to unmute, Alice.
Yes, please.
Okay. No, it's more a comment. I got so inspired of your words, and then how society could help SMEs, and I think that's really important now for the future, the digital future. 20 years ago, we had lousy broadband in my region. We said we should have really good broadband. Now we have more than 80% of the people have more than 100 megabit, and I'm 1000 megabit right now. And that's absolutely important. If we are to digitize, we need a broadband that works in all Europe and of really, really high quality. So, well, I just got an inspired comment by your final words. Thank you.
Thank you. It is very important for the rural development. And I have to say, this is also a fairness. And we have to say, I want only to add, digitalization, I have to say, Eastern Europe becomes more and more a champion of this because they're embracing this. And it's also, often we can learn also from if you, Mr. Winkler says, diversity Eastern Europe has to learn, we have to learn often also from each other. There is no better or more or one in the other. We can learn only from each other.
So thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time and participating. All of you, be diverse, and you all are diverse. You're contributing regularly to work, life, politics, business, organization. So be inspiration to others. And thank you once more, Mr. Winkler, for hosting it. Thank you, Mr. Bergquist, for being here. Thank you, Ursula. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Anand. Thank you, Horst. So have a very, very nice day and have an excellent, fantastic exit strategy.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Please check our website. We have many more webinars coming up. This webinar was recorded and will be put on YouTube, and we will share it with you later so you can distribute it within your network or listen to it again, whatever you like. Thank you, everybody.
I would like to add something only to Mr. Go also. In our network, we have one association with member, the European Regional Airlines, who are active in our board. So we have already this topic, airlines, also often discussed in our network.
Excellent.
So thank you very much again. Thank you, Srita.